It is now my honor to introduce the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs, General Eric Shinseki. The General is a 1965 West Point graduate who served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, first with the 25th Infantry Division from 1965 to 1966, and then with the 5th Cavalry Regiment from 1969 to 1970. Twice he was wounded, but instead of going home, he soldiered on to rise in rank and responsibly to command a squadron, a brigade, the 1st Cavalry Division, the 7th Army, and then in 1999 as the 34th Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He retired in June 2003 after successfully leading the Army during the early days of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Today he leads the 2nd largest federal department that is solely tasked with honoring a nation's promise to her veterans. In his 3 years at the helm, he has added new herbicide exposure presumptions, eased the PTSD claims process, and greatly increased programs to better care for women veterans, rural veterans, and especially those who are homeless. Through his stellar leadership and vision, he continues to transform the way his department conducts business, most especially inside the Veterans Benefits Administration and through the VA still has many changes. He as always does what is right for America's veterans and their families. I am proud to say the VA has no stronger advocate than the VFW on Capitol Hill, in the White House, and in all 1,400 communities where there is a VA facility. Comrades, I present to you a fellow combat veteran, the recipient of 2 Purple Hearts, 3 Bronze Stars for Valor, the former Chief of Staff of the United States Army, and now the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Eric Shinseki. Make him welcome. General, nice to have you here, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Very, very warm of you. Senior Vice Commander-in-Chief John Hamilton, congratulations to you, John, as you'll soon be assuming new responsibilities here, and I look forward to working with you to make things better for veterans. Thanks for those kind words. Let me also just acknowledge Commander-in-Chief Richard Denoyer. I know Richard is about other responsibilities right now, but I'd like to thank him as well for his many years of devotion to veterans, and particularly this past very significant year of his leadership of the VFW. And Godspeed to him and his family as he turns over his responsibilities. Let me also acknowledge National Adjutant Gunnar Kent, National Executive Director Bob Wallace, National Service Director Bill Bradshaw, and the other members of VA's leadership. To Gwen Rankin, President of your VFW National Ladies Auxiliary, let me offer my thanks for the unwavering support the auxiliary has provided to veterans and their families for 100 years now. Congratulations to her and her members, past and present, on reaching such a distinguished milestone of service on behalf of America's veterans. Other members of the VFW, fellow veterans, VA colleagues, distinguished guests, and among them, Medal of Honor recipient Bruce Crandall, who I understand is in the audience, and then also a good friend of mine, war correspondent Joe Galloway. Other guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm greatly honored to be addressing an organization that has for well over a century now been a powerfully important voice in the halls of Congress and the Oval Office and all across the country where veterans' issues were involved. Bob Wallace has been your diligent representative and our reliable partner in getting done what needed to be done. I'm especially honored to be following President Obama, who addressed you yesterday, and to thank you and your families for your patriotism and service to the nation. The President's commitment to veterans was clear from my first meeting with him way back in November 2008, and that's part of the reason why I'm here today. His commitment to veterans from that first meeting was genuine, runs deep, and is unwavering, and I'll talk more about that. It is his vision to transform VA, to provide veterans and families better transitions out of the military. better health care, especially mental health, faster and more accurate processing of compensation claims, better educational opportunities, job counseling, job opportunities. And I'm here today to report to you on the state of the VA. Let me review how things looked 3.5 years ago, what changes we have put into motion since, and where we're headed in the future. 3.5 years ago, the country was heavily engaged in 2 operations, Iraq and Afghanistan. The first major war of the 21st century being fought by a smaller, all-volunteer force. Repeated deployments of that force have created issues that don't show up until later deployments. It takes a superb, disciplined fighting force to handle this kind of strain. And the men and women who wear our nation's uniforms today, as they have in the past, are magnificent. More of them are surviving catastrophic injuries because of improved body armor, better combat life-saving skills, rapid medical evacuation from battle zone to stateside hospitals. That's fact. But higher battlefield survival rates also mean more complex casualties, the compounding effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injuries, multiple amputations, 5 quadruple amputees from this war, with complications of blindness, deafness, and genitourinary injuries also. We had to create a word for this, polytrauma, and we have since built 5 polytrauma centers of excellence, the best in the world, and an entire system of polytrauma care to treat these patients and enable them to go home. 3.5 years ago, we were still grappling with unresolved issues from 2 past wars. The Gulf War over 20 years ago and the Vietnam War almost 50 years ago now. We didn't take care of business back then when we should have, and some veterans were dying without benefits. 3.5 years ago, 107,000 veterans were estimated to be homeless in this rich and powerful country. The President has said we won't be satisfied until every veteran who has fought for America has a home in America. But this rich and powerful country had suffered an economic downturn, the likes of which we had not seen since the Great Depression, and certainly not in my lifetime. In spite of a collapsing economy, the President was resolute, determined not to let veterans' homelessness spiral out of control, and gave specific guidance. In 2009, there were over 23 million living veterans in this country, but only 7.4 million of them were enrolled in VA health care, and only 3 million were receiving compensation and pension benefits from VA. With less than a third of the veteran population enrolled in VA, we had an outreach problem. We knew it. We had an outreach problem. Many didn't know about VA or their possible benefits. We had an access problem. Even if they knew about us, they had difficulty getting in to get their services. And then we had, even back then, a backlog in disability claims, one which had been there for decades. Well, that was the landscape in 2009, and we needed to put things in motion. We immediately focused on 3 key priorities. I've talked about them before, that came out of my talks and my walk-arounds with a variety of stakeholders. Bob Wallace and I and executive directors of the 5 other major VSOs still meet today, nearly monthly, and continue to talk. But those priorities remain unchanged today. Increase veteran access to VA benefits and services. 1/3 market penetration isn't good enough. Eliminate the backlog in disability claims in 2015. End veterans' homelessness in 2015. Now, folks, tighten up whenever you tag dates to goals, meaning that sense of urgency is just about probably right. The first of order of business for VA was to establish closer and more collaborative working relationships with DoD. As I often remind folks, very little of what we do in VA originates in VA. Most of it originates in DoD. It takes both departments to create a seamless transition for separating service members to return home career-ready, to live, work, raise children, and contribute to restoring the strength of our economy. The Secretaries of Defense, Bob Gates, Leon Panetta, and I have personally met 9 times in the past 17 months. Leon Panetta is a dedicated public servant who has been insightful, decisive, and a good friend to me and to veterans. as is Bob Gates. Tomorrow, Secretary Panetta and I will testify before a joint committee of the House Armed Services and the House Veterans Affairs Committees, perhaps the first time two secretaries have done this. Our second priority at VA was to fix VA's budget process. You can't create change without resources. And when you're going to change an organization, money is firepower. For the past 3.5 years, VA has presented compelling arguments for strengthening VA's budget, and the President has been stalwart in his support. In 2009, VA inherited a budget of totaling $99.8 billion, a good budget. It was a good budget, not spectacular, but a good one. In 2010, the President increased our budget to $127.2 billion, a near 30% increase in a single year. The President's 2013 budget request currently before the Congress is for $140.3 billion, a 40% increase since 2009. During this period of economic downturn, few private sector businesses and few other federal departments have sustained this kind of budget growth, and you can credit the President's leadership on this. In a discussion about values I was once involved in, I was lectured by someone as we wrestled values. His statement, "Show me your budget and I'll tell you your values. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value." Now, by that standard, there's no question where the President stands. He gets it. He understands our obligation to veterans, and he's provided VA the budgets that allow for meaningful change. So what have we put into motion these past 3.5 years? First, we took care of some long overdue business. I call this cleaning up the battlefield. For you Vietnam veterans, we granted presumption of service connection for 3 new Agent Orange-related conditions: Parkinson's, hairy cell and other chronic B-cell leukemias, ischemic heart disease. Welcome home. Welcome home. For you Gulf War veterans, we granted presumption of service connection for 9 diseases associated with Gulf War illness, for veterans who fought in Desert Storm and veterans of Afghanistan. While we must continue to research what might have caused this illness, our responsibility is to continue to diagnose and treat symptoms of these verifiable diseases. And for all combat veterans with verifiable PTSD, World War II, Korea, Dom Rep, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Somalia, Operation Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, and others, we granted presumption of service connection for PTSD. Now, these 3 decisions alone have dramatically expanded access to VA medical care for hundreds of thousands of veterans. In addition, we've mounted an aggressive outreach campaign to educate members, service members, and veterans about VA's capabilities and their benefits. Since January 2009, enrollment in VA healthcare is up nearly 800,000, a 10% increase. Well, that's great news. That's great news. It means we're expanding access. And in expanding outreach and increasing access to VA healthcare, we also, understandably, increased the number of compensation claims. Also, good news. Veterans who previously had no access are now enrolling and submitting claims. 3.5 years ago, the total claims inventory was roughly 400,000. Today, the total claims inventory is 880,000. The backlog, the number of claims older than 125 days, 3.5 years ago, was about 135,000 in 2009, and it's roughly about 580,000 today. Growth in these numbers, both the total number of claims and backlog claims, is what happens when we increase access. But it was the right thing to do. Right thing to do for Vietnam veterans, right thing to do for Gulf War veterans, and for combat veterans of all wars. There was no other option in my mind. Now, one last snapshot of the claims backlog. In 2009, we completed 900,000 claims decisions going out the door, 900,000. But we took in 1 million claims in return. 2010, we completed 1 million claims decisions going to veterans, going out the door. 1.2 million claims came in. In 2011, again for the second year in a row, we produced 1 million claims decisions going out the door. 1.3 million came in. Now look, simple math. If the total number of claims in our inventory today is 880,000, and we have generated nearly 3 million claims decisions over the past 3 years, you know that today's inventory and backlog are not the same claims that were there 3 years ago, not the same claims that were there 2 years ago, not even a year ago. Now, there's sure to be a handful of exceptionally complex cases that have lingered, but the process is dynamic, and it's also a big numbers process, and veterans are being helped. It's a big numbers process, and we do almost all of it on paper. Paper is what we receive from DOD. With the planned drawdown of up to 1 million troops over the next 5 years, the number of new claims will continue to grow. Our job is to begin to chip away at the backlog. It'll take both departments for VA to go paperless. Hence my close working relationship with Secretary Panetta, and he and I are pulling our departments into the future on topics like this. You heard the President yesterday, solve the backlog. Solve the backlog. That's his guidance to us. We are working hard and smart to solve this correctly. We already have a new automation tool called VBMS, the Veterans Benefit Management System, going from paper to paperless. VBMS, being piloted at 2 regional offices for over a year now. We'll have it up and running at 16 regional offices by the end of this year, and at all 56 regional offices by the end of 2013. We're also redirecting the 1,200 of our most senior claims adjudicators, 1,200 of them, 37% of our experienced staff, back to the backlog, which ballooned while I asked them to focus on the 250,000 Agent Orange claims they just completed. Same folks have to handle these claims. They just completed it. 250,000 Vietnam veterans are being helped as a result of their work, and now they're being redirected back to the backlog. I have committed to ending the claims backlog in 2015. We're on track by putting in place a system that processes all claims within 125 days and at 98% accuracy level. And with the President's strong support, we have the resources we need, and we're on track to do it. A lot of people talk about the backlog. Not everybody understands it in details. To further increase access, we've added 57 new community-based outpatient clinics, 20 more mobile health clinics. Our 5th polytrauma center opened, as I indicated, in San Antonio last year. We have 4 new hospitals under construction in Denver, Orlando, Las Vegas, and New Orleans. We will open Las Vegas on 6 August, the first new VA hospital in 17 years, and provide veterans and service members stationed in that area the state-of-the-art facility they need and deserve. As the President said yesterday, we keep our promises. We've also invested heavily in new telehealth, telemedicine technologies to overcome the tyranny of distance and extend our reach into the most remote rural areas where veterans live. Enhanced IT technologies are also making it easier for veterans to make appointments, access their medical records, and find out about available benefits and services on e-benefits. We have placed full-time women's veterans program managers at 144 medical centers to advocate for women veterans. We have women veterans coordinators at all 56 regional offices to assist women with their claims. Since 2009, we've opened 19 clinics designed specifically to serve women veterans and provided training in women's health to more than 1,200 healthcare providers. We've also increased access to our national cemeteries, opening 3 new national cemeteries and 14 new state cemeteries. Additionally, 5 more national cemeteries are planned, as well as 5 columbarium-only community cemeteries in urban areas and 8 burial grounds in rural areas owned and managed by VA, but co-located with non-VA cemeteries. As some of you know, for the past 10 years, NCA has been the top-rated public or private customer service organization in the entire country, according to the University of Michigan's American Customer Satisfaction Index, outperforming Google, Lexus, Apple, all the rest, hands down. Not a surprise when nearly 3/4 of NCA employees are veterans. In 2009, I told you that veterans lead the nation in homelessness, depression, substance abuse, suicides, and they rank right up there in joblessness as well. As I mentioned earlier, 107,000 veterans were estimated to be homeless in 2009. By January 2011, that estimate was down to 67,500. We believe that when the Department of Housing and Urban Development announces its 2012 estimate sometime before the end of this year, that the estimated number of homeless veterans will be below 60,000, keeping us on track to break 35,000 in 2013, and then moving by 2015 to end the rescue phase of veterans' homelessness. A rescue phase, getting homeless veterans off the streets. The prevention phase of defeating veterans' homelessness is ongoing and requires VA to focus all of our capabilities to keep an invisible, at-risk population of veterans and families from slipping into that downward spiral that ends up in homelessness. Now look, we have over 900,000 veterans and eligible family members in training and education today. Over 900,000. Universities, colleges, community colleges, tech schools, the trades. Part of our prevention mission is to see them all graduate. Anyone who drops out or flunks out of these programs in this economy is at a high risk of homelessness. So my one-word speech to any student veteran group, whenever I engage them, one-word speech: graduate. Graduate. And if I sound like your dad, I am. I'm paying most of your bills. So graduate. There's no payoff to the country, no payoff to you, no payoff to this program unless you cross that graduation stage. Now, in 2005, at the height of operations in Iraq, we had 13,000. 2005, height of operations in Iraq, we had 13,000 mental health professionals handling health care needs for our veterans. Today, that number is over 20,000, and we've recently announced that we're hiring another 1,600 healthcare professionals to increase our ability to address the growth in mental health requirements spawned by a decade of repetitive deployments. We know that when we diagnose and treat, people usually get better, and the long-term trends of our treatment efforts are good. Among the 8.6 million veterans enrolled in VA healthcare today, the number receiving mental health treatment is up, and that's a good sign. At the same time, for veterans who receive treatment, our suicide rates are trending down, an indication that treatment, including evidence-based therapies, is working. However, too many veterans still leave the military with mental health issues we never find out about because the issues weren't noted in their DoD records. This is a little bit about that stigma, or because veterans never enrolled in VA's health care to begin with. Most veterans who commit suicides, perhaps as many as 2 out of 3, were never enrolled in VA. So as good as we think our programs are, we can't help those we don't treat. Another reason 2 secretaries meet regularly to create the seamless transition and make sure we get service members departing in uniform coming to VA. And another reason increasing access is so important. One of our most successful outreach efforts is our Veterans Crisis Line. DoD knows this line as the military crisis line. Same number, same trained VA mental health professionals answer the phone. No cost to DoD. Since starting up in 2007, over 640,000 people have called in, including over 8,000 active duty service members. We've made over 99,000 referrals for care and rescued over 23,000 from potential suicides in progress. Some younger veterans are more comfortable with chatting and texting, so in 2009, we added an online chat service, and in 2011, a texting service as well. We have worked to ensure greater collaboration between VA and DoD, especially in that critical phase before service members leave the military. We simply must transition them better, and we do this best with warm handoffs between the 2 departments. That is key to preventing that downward spiral that often leads to homelessness, sometimes to suicide. Last year, we completed expansion of our joint DoD-VA integrated disability evaluation system from the original 27 sites to 139 sites today, a major improvement towards a seamless transition to veteran status. But there's still more VA and DoD can do together. Another reason the two secretaries meet. Secretary Gates and I worked these initiatives hard. Secretary Panetta and I have worked them even harder. We are both committed to a fully operational, integrated electronic health record by the year 2017. Good jobs are essential for veterans, and we are proud to have partnered with the First Lady's Joining Forces initiative and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Hiring Our Heroes campaign. The President, the First Lady, and Dr. Biden have provided strong leadership in increasing employment opportunities for veterans and spouses of serving military service members. The President challenged private companies to hire or train 100,000 veterans or military spouses by the end of 2013. They've already received commitment from 2,100 companies for 175,000 hires, and 90,000 veterans and spouses have already been hired. VA has also joined private companies and other departments like Defense, Homeland Security, Transportation, and Labor in efforts to hire veterans and assist others in hiring them. As you know, 300,000 people work at VA. Over 100,000 of them are veterans, and we're moving that up to 40%. In January, our hiring fair in Washington, D.C. attracted over 4,100 veterans, resulting in over 2,600 on-the-spot interviews and more than 500 job offers that day. We followed that success with an even bigger hiring fair last month in Detroit, in conjunction with our National Veterans Small Business Exposition. Over 8,000 veterans participated, more than 5,700 of them were interviewed, over 1,200 received on-the-spot job offers. And those offers continue in the weeks and months following. Simultaneously, 3,500 people participated in the Veterans Small Business Training Exposition. It was our opportunity to bring veteran small business owners into direct contact with federal acquisition decision makers so they could better understand our procurement requirements. They could demonstrate their capabilities, and it could improve their ability to prepare competitive proposals for government contracts. All of this to strengthen small business owner opportunity. Why? Because veterans hire veterans. And the more successful small business owners we have, the better opportunity we have to create churn for veterans in the job market. So where are we headed? Where are we headed? I intend to be here next year to update you next summer. Here's what I intend to report. We'll have increased spinal cord injury funding by 28% between 2009 and 2013. By 2014, that increase in spinal cord injury funding is going to be 36%, will likely be 36%, all of this subject to passage of budgets. We will have increased TBI funding by 38% between 2009 and 2013. By 2014, that increase will likely be 51%. We will have increased mental health funding by 39% between 2009 and 2013. By 2014, that increase will likely be 45%. We will have increased long-term care funding between 2009 and 2013 by 39%. By 2014, that increase will likely be 50%. We will have increased prosthetics funding by 58% between 2009 and 13. By 2014, that increase will likely be 75%. We will have increased women's veterans funding by 123% between 2009 and 2013. By 2014, that increase will likely be 158%. We'll have increased OEF, OND, OIF funding by 124% between 2009 and 13, and by 2014, that increase will likely be 161%. Our Veterans Benefit Management System will be fully operational at most regional centers, and just 40% of our claims will be older than 125 days, and we're moving to 2015 to end the backlog in claims. So now, who doesn't think the President gets it down deep where it counts? Remember, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. There's no question that our President highly values what veterans, their families, and our survivors have meant to this country. God bless our country. God bless our president. May God continue to bless the men and women who serve and have served this nation so honorably and so valiantly in uniform. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Secretary, sorry I wasn't here to greet you.
Not at all.
Good to see you. Good to see you again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you for what you do for veterans, sir.